Hello all, very good evening and happy new year, and welcome to first Jnanavardhini session of 2026. So, let's welcome Gaurav Mehta, who is a co-founder of Concur Consent Management, one of the contenders of consent management systems organized by MITI, MEITY. So today he's going to give us he and his team going to give us a demo on how this tool facilitate the data discovery yeah, without wasting the time, I'm hand over the floor to Mr. Gaurav and team. So welcome Gaurav ji. Kindly introduce yourself a bit.
Uh, Thank you so much for your kind introduction. I'm a co-founder at Concur, have been active into the domain of data privacy and DPDPA primarily for last 2.5, 3 years. Our primary focus has been building that infrastructure and post that infrastructure, building that consumer-facing solution that not only the data privacy officers internally, the legal team.
You have become mute.
Gaurav, we are not able to listen.
Oh, sorry. Thank you so much for kind introduction. Thank you so much for kind introduction. Primarily, I've been active into the data protection or data privacy space for quite some time. I moved from forensic space, auditing, investigation to data privacy back in 2022-23. So the first thing that we build is a core infrastructure standards for the DPDP around it. Then we move forward with whole operations aspect of it, like your data discovery, organization modules, how you handle the consent planning and all those things. And since last 1.5 years, we have gone deep into the data discovery aspects itself. So because today's conversation is around data discovery and tool, I'm going to bifurcate into two aspects. One is what we have understood, what we are offering at Concur, and with that, what we have in the roadmap. Because data discovery is something that India is witnessing for the first time, but in our understanding, this is quite a mature space. So the companies like ForcePoint, Classify, Informatica, Big ID, they have been there for almost more than decade. So this space is quite matured when you look from the larger perspective of not just DPDPA but across the world. So this space is very mature. So as a startup, we were thinking, how do we approach it? How do we build the product? Because competing with these giants in this space is going to be quite tricky. So what we have discovered is in the following segments. One thing is, okay, let me just share the presentation. I think that would be more structured. So where do I present? Okay, share. Yeah. So yeah, okay. Slide. Yeah. So what we see here is we look at the ecosystem in two compartments. One is structured data and another one is unstructured data. When we talk about the structured data, we have MySQL, Snowflake, Data House, and every other systems that the organization is using. So far, there are around 200, I would call the data sources or the places where the data might reside. It could be from Trino, it could be Hadoop, it could be everything. So it's a too much of a coverage that is to be done by the organization, part one. Part two, we have unstructured sources like you could have Google SharePoint, sorry, you could have Google Drive, you could have S3 bucket, you could have Google Cloud Platform, you could have SharePoint, you could even have your legacy systems or the server on which the data is residing. So that's the second compartment. With that, we have further bifurcated the third compartment, which is more like your mobile devices, your laptops, because most of the large organizations have BYOD, bring your own devices, or sometimes they have their own devices that are allocated on the behalf of our organization. So during our engagement with the client, we discovered that there's a lot of PII data that is already residing in that system as well. So when we look at the data discovery, I agree to Navi sirs that this is the most prominent problem for the industry. But are we a right fit for solving that problem? We are not that confident. What we have built, we are going to demonstrate. Because when we go into the data discovery part, the data within this unstructured could be PDF, could be text, could be image. In this image, it could be Aadhaar card photo, it could be PAN card photo. A lot of time, it could be another thing. So it requires a lot of building, lot of custom module development, lot of AI, lot of classification, everything else. And as a startup, we prioritize only structured data. So without wasting much of time, what I'm going to do is I'm going to showcase you what we have available with us, and then maybe go into deeper, what would be the recommendation? But to be very frank and upfront, if your ask is data discovery solution, then we are not a right party because our solution has a limited coverage and limited maturity. So herein, whichever the banks or whichever the larger clients that are coming in, we are telling them to go after a mature solution like Big ID, Classify, Informatica, etc. So Abhishek, to you. Uh, uh, Abhishek, how do I make Abhishek admin? Ramesh, can you help
Sir,
me with this?
Navi sir,
I'm facing some
Navi
network
sir,
issue. Can we wait just 1 minute?
Yeah, sure. Meanwhile, we are making you admin.
in the meantime,
No, he's already
he's a co-host. He
Yeah.
can share Gaurav. He can share the
Okay.
screen. Yeah.
Abhishek, you can share the screen whenever. So Navi sir, hopefully I have set out the expectation about the demo and what we have.
Yeah.
Okay. Meanwhile, if there are any questions around like what is our and for example, one of the because this is the most prominent problem for the organization that has a lot of legacy data. Their data sprawl is everywhere, and they don't know how to even discover that. And after even discovering how to classify that, and once the classification is done, how to collect the legacy consent as per section 5.2. So uh, uh, three different compartment. Discovery is one part. Classification is again a tricky part because sometimes uh, some data that has been identified by the AI classification is not very much reliable. So this, yeah. Abhishek, are you able to solve?
So your software uses AI, Gaurav?
No, sir. We are. I mean, we have seen. So, sir, there are a lot of part to it. As a consent manager, our thought process was that we need to know the data that is being collected, like PII data. The schema needs to be known to us. So that was our primary approach. But when we are going after the industry, they are saying, no, no, no. We don't not only want to know the schema, we also want to know where the data is residing because tomorrow the deletion request needs to be triggered and they are thinking that the consent manager will have that index that ABCD is the place where the data associated with the Navi G is there and that needs to be deleted. So that is something that has caught us off guard. We did not assume because you are thinking that the data deletion and the data discovery primarily might have done by the organization because the space is already quite mature. So uh, I believe that is a misalignment on terms of the startup assumptions as well as because of the resources we could not dive very deep into it. So when we talk about the discovery, one thing is how it usually works is that you need to disclose the systems that are there with you. So if organization has, let's say, a warehouse, a data warehouse, or let's say they have Snowflake, so they allow or they create the read-only access for a data discovery solution so that it can start crawling that data. And once it has crawled the data, the organization expectation is that they should be able to tell me what data is there, uh, how many places that data is created, and with that, create a proper index to it. Like in for Naviji, I have found data in the lake warehouse. I have found it on my primary database. I have found it on my accounting system. I have found it on my ticketing system. So here the coverage is so exhaustive that I'm not sure how the organization would be moving forward. But this is a critical problem, part one. Part two, when we are talking about the classification, like Naviji, you have said that the classification is not a straightforward classification. We have data dictionary of around 183 PII element, but some PII might be contextual for the organization, some might not be the PII for organization. So a classifier can tentatively give this is a PII data, but it cannot necessarily give you with a perfection that's a PII data is there. So yeah, Abhishek, can you just log in into the CMP system?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So Naviji, I thought that this would be more about the consent management, everything else system. So I haven't put that live.
We'll give you another opportunity after a couple of months for consent management if necessary. But this is the current, say, problem which the industry is facing. Okay, and the first questions which we get after we do our gap analysis is also about this discovery of the data.
Correct.
So that's why I've been trying to say that it is important. Yeah.
Oh, that's issue because in the evening only that I mean, Soma reached out for consent management. So I thought that the consent management operation part all would be there. But as soon as you told discovery, so we didn't get much time to prepare or get the system live
It's
because
okay. I think in the beginning itself, I had said that this will be our first task, discovery and classification. Okay. Doesn't matter. You just that particular module you try to
okay.
go through
So
that.
one of the way that we are approaching, so data discovery, like I said, that we are taking a totally different offering. So let me go into how another alternate. So when we talk about the discovery, Navi sir, may I ask, is it about discovering the legacy data or is
So
it
yeah,
about
we have
discovering?
to start with the legacy data only. See, what I am suggesting most of these companies is on the one
Mhm.
side you set up the future requirement. That is, have
Uh-huh.
a separate methodology for collection of prospective personal data. Okay. At the same
Okay.
time, try to work on your legacy data because that is more difficult because we have not used proper consent at the time of collection. We don't know what elements are there and where it is there, as you are saying. Okay. Whereas the new data, we can always bring it in a structured form and perhaps create a new database, put everything in the new database. It is easier to handle the prospective data. Okay, so maybe most of the companies, I am actually suggesting that they approach it as two different tasks, one for prospective data and second for the legacy data. Because out of the legacy data, if tomorrow you are not able to get the consent, I will say that you have to actually archive them or delete them, kind of a thing. But prospective data, you may have to uh, carry it on for the future.
Sir, can I interject here?
Yeah.
Sir, this is opposite of what we are looking at. For example, when we talk about the legacy data, the section 5.2 says that reasonable period to recollect the consent or refresh your old consent. So the industry has taken a lax attitude towards it and they are saying, legacy data, we are not bothered about it. Whenever the reasonable time would come in, obviously that would be after 18 months, then we'll go after it. Okay. So one is identifying your older data and then going after legacy consent collection or refresh of the consent. That is one aspect of which the industry is not at all concerned about. Yes, discovery needs to be done today so that maybe after 6 months or 4 months or 3 months or 2 months, you'll have a ready. On the another aspect, they are looking at in a following way. Okay, Gaurav, legacy, we will identify the data that is ongoing activity. But right now we have, Abhishek, login please. Right now we have the 7 places wherein we are actually collecting the data. And at least what we can do is we can spin up the notices and we can start showing the consent notice so that we start collecting that consent artifact that could, in the second step, be integrated to our internal systems. Because uh, one is consent is a living artifact, right? My systems are going to be dependent on it. So my biggest concern is that how do I integrate with my systems right now? And because I don't have a consent, I'm not able to integrate within my own system. So either I go for collection of legacy consent, which could be a little more tricky, or I could start collecting the consent in my collection point. So here, I'm going to show you methodology how discovery is done in the limited way. So what we have is we have something called data element module. In this data element module, Abhishek, can you go into data element module? Yeah. So in this data element module, we have something called data Veda. Uh, so, uh, uh, so Naviji, one is your old data. Let's keep it aside for a minute. So in actually, when we have gone into the implementation, organizations are not collecting a lot of PI data. For example, for one of the bank engagement, we prima facie identified they are not collecting more than 40 data points. By that we mean email, mobile number, Aadhaar card, PAN card, age, salary slip, or potential home address and their guarantor detail. So when we go for the biggest of the biggest player like BFSI, we see or we expect not more than 40 to 60 data points in the worst to worst case scenario that will be collected. And in terms of small player, they are not collecting more than email, mobile number. So when we look at the consent manager point of view, for me to help spin up the notice and collect the consent, I need to have that dictionary of the data that is collected. So one of the option is that if you talk with your technical team, they would be able to tell you, sir, these are the customer journey. We are collecting ABCD data, and that catalog could be used instantly from our system. So for we have 183 PII data that has been identified. So one way could be your product team has gone through your product and you now have information that Aadhaar card, PAN card, salary slip, passport number, voter ID, etc. is collected, and you can start collecting the consent as per the DPDPA. Approach one. If you don't, if your PI data is not visible here, then what we allow to do is we allow you to auto discover. For example, when you go to discover, go to Abhishek Discovery. Here, what we ask organization to do is that anyway, all data is collected by the backend system and it is facilitated by the front end system. So in the backend, there are APIs that actually facilitate the collection of the personal data. So we tell them to just provide the API documentation. So in this API documentation, our system analyzes what PII data is being collected. So organization might have for one mobile app, one backend, different backend. They might have for one website, one different backend, or they might have a multiple microservices.
Now,
So,
Gaurav, one second. Okay, I'm sorry, I will be interjecting you because what we need is
please.
an understanding of the whole thing. I know that you have studied it quite in depth, so you can answer these questions. Now, when you say personal data, now how is your system recognizing any data as personal data, particularly as personal data coming within the jurisdiction of DPDPA? There is a definition point which we have to address when you set your system or software, is it not?
So this is what the definition would be coming from the legal person. For example, if you are just collecting email address of an organization, likelihood is that we might flag it as a PII. But if you are just collecting the email address, then it might not be attached to the individual identity. Therefore, it might not be the PII for the organization. So what we are trying to do is we are trying to identify the potential PII and give you a catalog of it. Then you have to manually intervene anyway.
Okay. If you have studied what I have been discussing in the DGPSI, I have been telling that you create these potential data elements as provisional PII and then periodically run some kind of a software of aggregating different elements of these data elements so as to identify the associations and create personal identification out of these data elements which you first gather and put it in some provisional store. That is, we are talking of one stage where you just collect an email, collect some number, phone number, collect some names, whatever is available in the system, put it in one place, and then run a software like what perhaps UIDA sometimes used for, let's say, deduplication and other things. Here we are talking of aggregating and finding associations within that. So there is one email here, there is one name somewhere else. I have to identify whether this email belongs to this particular person. Now that kind of say data analytics needs to be run on this particular provisional data elements store. Then you have to extract out of that PII. That is what I feel is to be done. Now, technically, how you are handling it is what I would like to know.
So, Naviji, what you are talking about is the profiling of individual data within the systems. It's a deduplication, it's a triangulation, because at one place, Naviji might have registered with an email, another place he might have registered with a mobile number. And that's where the organization get confused. Okay, is Navi with a mobile number different? And if Navi with G with an email, is it different or not? But technically, if the name is common to both parties, then it needs to be attached that Navi G has not only mobile number and it also has a email
so
with us. And
you are taking the name as the core element. Is it correct then?
No, we are allowing. So this is where I need to clearly demarcate the line. That is what we call discovering, indexing, profiling so that tomorrow the data deletion request, your data principal request, data updation request is quite seamless and it's easy to execute. So here it's a thing that is usually done by the organization and comes into what we call data governance, because their data is sprawled everywhere. They haven't even done the duplication. One team has spin up another product, and that's where the Navigi registered. They have also interacted with the Navigi, and their data might be lying with the laptop as well. So
Correct.
this is whole the data consolidation practice that the organization has to go through. Post this only the consent manager will come in. So let's assume the organization has gone through the discovery. Now, during this profiling exercise, they know, or they have consolidated the profile of Navigi. They know email is there with one team, mobile number is there with another team, Aadhaar card is there in the bucket. And tomorrow if Navigi comes, I need to delete all three activities. So this is the end action that they have successfully done post discovery, classification, indexing, profiling, deduplication, full stop. And now the organization knows that, okay, we are collecting email number, mobile number, and therefore we need to spin the notice accordingly. So the boundary finishes here and the consent manager comes into the second step. So here, to be very precise, the world of discovering or duplication and all those things, we are assuming the organization and done that, and then we are coming into the place.
Agreed. Yeah.
So in order to make things easier, again, sir, I told you, settling out the old posture of the organization, like what it is, why it's going to be very cumbersome activity, and for that we cannot stop the consent collection part and other part. So what we are telling that is, okay, let's assume you have a zero data at this point of time. Forget about it for a while. Meanwhile, you might have few of the places where you are collecting the personal data, your contact us page, your apply for job page, your apply for loan page, interested in creating a profile page, register page. We say that these are 7, 8 collection point of the touch point of yours. Do you know what PII data you are collecting there? They say we don't know. So I say that the cheapest option for you would be you go register yourself on this page and you would be able to make a note of what are the PII data that is collected. Very simple and easy to use. Second thing is, once you have made this note down of the data, you can also engage with your technical and see if there is some hidden PII data that is collected. Maybe browser history, or maybe your fingerprint of browser, etc. And you are almost ready to define your notices and go after it. So when we talk about the data discovery, one thing is actually data residing. Another thing when we interpret is, okay, what EIA data I'm collecting? I don't know the schema. I don't know the fields that is being collected. So here, what I showed you is that when we upload the API documentation, I'm able to see. If you see, Abhishek, can you zoom in? Yeah. If you see here, we are able to understand that on the API level, there is a /auth/register page, which is collecting the email address. So our system has identified is a personal data. Yes. Is it a PII? For us, yes. Is it a data element? Yes. Lawful basis consent required. So all likewise, if you see on the register page also, password is collected. On the register page, mobile is collected. So if you see the personal data, the answer is no, no, no. So this is where the starting, I mean, legacy consent and data discovery, that's a different behemoth. This itself is a different behemoth. So here, what we are telling organization is, okay, you continue your practice. Meanwhile, it's very easy for you to start integrating the notices within your product. And as soon as you integrate it, you might have some initial 1,000, 2,000, 5,000 test consents that could be utilized for you internally align your systems to ensure those are DPDP compliant. So this is a low hanging fruit. Cookie consent is a low hanging integration of the DPDP notice and collection of the data is low hanging fruit. Legacy consent, whenever you are ready, you move forward with that. So again, just to give a disclaimer, based on our team, our size, our resources, this is what we thought of.
Okay, no problem.
Yeah.
I'm not expecting a solution to be available today which matches in entirely our expectation. So don't worry. I know there is a problem and we need to work towards that. Yeah.
I'll show you. We have around 30 connectors of the different databases. But this 30 itself, one of the organizations said, Gaurav, we have a laptop. Now we started building Cogniscan for the laptop so that we have to scan all the laptop. But the problem comes that also people are so, I would call naive, or they are so unprofessional. They also have their a lot of personal data in there. So the problem becomes who's scanning their personal data. We ourselves are violating by scanning their personal data. Now we told them we have to deploy this on their cloud. So that would take another 1 or 2 months of permission. So uh, it's like we are discovering the new problem every day, and the organization is not flexible to accommodate that thing, right? So we said that one of the approach could be we deploy the Cogniscan on the individual's computer so that we are able to know what PII data is there. So they said no, that would be again company policy. And so that's why one thing that we are clearly recommending is that you go after the big IDs, you discover the
You are going there before the compliance person goes there. So if they talk to us, then we say it is company policy, then you have to change it. That is what DPDPA wants it.
right.
We cannot create a system for the existing company policy. We want the companies to create policies as required under the law, is it not?
Right.
So I think that is what you have to tell the companies, that don't tell me that this is my company policy and you have a software just to follow what I have already been doing for last several years. All that is completely something which has been done when DPDPA was not there. So we have to give zero value to your current company policy and start working on new policies. So that is why before you go in for software installation, there is a need for companies to go for compliance consultancy and then get into the software. Otherwise, we are putting the horse before the cart kind of a thing, is it not?
This is very true, sir, because when we are showcasing the product or selling the product, they are thinking that we have done over engineering. They think that, okay, we are unnecessarily creating that peer environment. Maybe we do not have enough of technical knowledge. So there are a lot of interpretations that are coming, and we are realizing that directly engaging, I mean, consent manager directly engaging with the data fiduciaries is not a right step. And therefore, we have started partnering with a systems integrator out there who are more equipped to have that communication with the market.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So here, again, I'm going to talk about discovering the data that is not legacy. So either you give us the API, or your technical team will give you the schema, or your compliance person will start using your product and they will see what are the PI data element or the data element that is being corrected. So either that could be directly added via API to our system, or you could do the discovery of your API documentation and we tell you what are the potential collection point and data elements that are collected. And with this, you start adding your purposes internally. I'm going to show you a quick demo. So smaller building block data element, with that your purposes, and post that you go into the translation. And once this already is done, you are ready to spin up the consent notice. So if it is a legacy notice, you send it via email, you send it via SMS, you show it on your web app, mobile app. So delivery mechanism could be a different channels. Here it's an interesting problem. Sir, again from the industry. Gaurav, we have around, one of the organizations, they have a large amount of legacy data. So they ask us, okay, how anyway, we have already discovered that we want to reach out to our customer and collect the consents from them. So we told that we will be able to show the notice within your app. We would be able to also show notice within your website, also send it via email, and if required via SMS as well. And none of those method is going to be impactful because the customer is anyway not active. The customer just क्यों क्या हुआ 10 minutes. Just a second. Sorry. Ah, so I'm just staying at a place. They have to start a music. Yeah. So I'm saying legacy data consent, you might reach out to your data principal via email, mobile or website or mobile app. But the issue is that the customer is anyway inactive. So the collection of the consent becomes theoretical. It is not practical. And the businesses were very much concerned because the cost of customer acquisition was, for some business, it was around 700, 800 rupee. For another businesses, it was around 2100 rupee. And that's where we got creative. We said that, okay, if the customer is not able to showcase the notice, or if they are not able to give the consent in spite of viewing it, tomorrow at any point of time, they would be touching the consent management system like us, or maybe Redacto or any other player. So we said that let us take your notice and get it delivered through the another consent manager, because the interoperability is already being worked out. So hopefully it's same like, मतलब कोई क्रिमिनल है, मैं उसके घर में नोटिस देना चाह रहा हूँ, और वो जब भी जाता हूँ घर पे मिलता नहीं है. सो व्हाट आई डू इज, मैं जाके, मुझे पता है कि ही इज एनीवे गोइंग टू द बार एवरी नाइट, सो आई डिलीवर द नोटिस देयर, सो दैट द ऑब्जेक्टिव ऑफ द बिजनेस इज एटलीस्ट कंप्लीटेड, दैट ओके कस्टमर ने व्यू कर लिया, उसने कंसेंट दे दिया, एंड अगर वो डिलीशन बोल रहा है देन डिलीशन एक्टिवेट हो जा रहा है. सो आई मीन, uh, uh, as we are getting to the implementation, there are a lot of nightmares that are coming in, and with step by step, we are trying to resolve it. Anyway, so data element, consent purposes, purpose translation, spinning up of the notices, and these notices are integrated with your various touch point, your website, mobile app, connected TV, point of sale, whatever be the customer's data collection point. So, yeah. So anyway. Abhishek, can you just show the data principal workflow?
Yes, sir.
And Navi said the ecosystem of India is going on such a different tangent. One of the bank had asked that, okay, the cookie consent needs to be European compliant, IAB, TCF. Another company already, I mean, I'm not naming the bank, already they had their data discovery solution. They are expecting the consent manager to have by default integration with them. I mean, from the day one, want additional data discovery solution. In the RFP, what we are looking trend is that they want to have a DPIA solution wherein it is customized to the need of the bank, so that it can reach out to like a thousands of branches across the India. I mean, it's been only a month. How can India specific player have a such kind of maturity? On the other end, what we are witnessing is that the consultants out there, especially the big fours and the big five, they are trying to translate the engineering and the technical problem as a legal problem and the compliance problem, by making it so exhaustive and so daunting to the data fiduciaries that they are totally clueless and confusing. So this is some larger trends that we are observing and that are concerned to us. So yeah. Anyway, yeah, data principal journey. So Reena ji, we are working on that certification as well. So we want to give a lot of training, but we are ourselves waiting for that confirmation from the mighty, because two of the stages are completed, and hopefully in the final round we'll have a lot of feedback from them. So based on the interpretation of the law, we have built the system on our understanding, but we are not that confident whether we are correct. We have over-engineered, we have under-engineered, are we going in the right direction or not? Therefore, we have refrained much from showcasing the product to the public at large, because that vetting is pending. I mean, that validation is pending. So anyway, so again, cookie consent. So Naviji, very interesting aspect. The government of India had asked that according to BRD CMS, the consent needs to be logged by the consent manager. So here, what we are doing is, when I am a data principal, I am going to any website, then first time I am unidentified individual. So when I'm giving the cookie consent, at this point of time, the individual who is giving the cookie consent is anonymous, and the CMS handles consent limit, cookie limitation and cookie control and all those things based on the preference that has been done. So here, what we are doing is we are creating something called virtual ID of a data principal. Now, here the data principal might drop off because he is no more interested in having a data transaction with the organization, or he might continue and do a data transaction with this organization. So as soon as the data transaction PIA identification or the PIA data is shared, now the cookie and the PIA both are correlated. So both are correlated. So, okay, Abhishek, just go to, so here, give some cookie consent and move forward. Yeah. So again, they had asked for WCAG compliant, but we are not sure how in the cookie consent you will have all those audio, video, and other things. So another nightmare. So here, I think this is something that I've already showcased last time. Did I? So Abhishek, register. So here, as soon as the register button is done, the consent manager is invoked by default. And the responsibility of this consent manager is to invoke the consent, to uh, uh, to achieve the goal of informed consent. So uh, I showcased the preliminary version of the notices almost 6 months ago, I believe, to Jan Vanadarini. Now we have a totally 8 different type of notices. And again, this is a learning from the industry. So one is there is a benchmark asked that the consent needs to be, the purposes needs to be specific, it needs to be granular, it needs to be simple. But when we went on to the industry, what we saw is that at certain collection point, you might have a limited data. For example, if you go to the Flipkart, they would only collect email and mobile number. But the purposes would be a lot more because they are business, they have a n number of goal to achieve. Likewise, when you go to the bank, they might have a lot of data to be collected, but the purposes would be very limited. I want your email, I want all the data for only account creation or your CIBIL verification. So what we discovered that it's not just one notice, you will have to have a multiple different type of notices based on the collection habit, what is the business goal, and how the consent needs to be improved, because collection of the consent is a bottom line. The imminent problem or the next problem that the businesses will face is that the customers are not giving consent. So Gaurav or the consent manager, can you help me some way in a legally way to improve the consent collection with maybe some kind of a dynamism, maybe with some kind of a structured approach or anything else? So what you see is this is one of type of notices. Abhishek, can you show another type of notice?
Gaurav, can I have a question?
Yeah, please.
Here, when you say full name in the last, right,
Mm-hmm.
the consent page, I saw full name.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
Mm-hmm.
you also talked about at the time of data discovery, you are going
Mm-hmm.
to work with the organization to have how they wanted to have. So, what my understanding now
Correct.
here is that when you come to the consent manager, the organization would
Mm-hmm.
like to have only that full name. There would be any first name, last name, because you already done the mapping. Is that right?
Correct.
Great, thank you.
So this is another type of notice where you see a taxonomy of a purpose. And this specific section is all customizable. So we have kept it dynamic because at some point of time, uh, uh, you might want to show a different notice to the tier 2 individual, or you might want to show a different notice to Maharashtra and different notice to Kannadigas. So maybe in a Kannadiga, you by default want to have uh, notice that is spin up in the local Kannada language. So there's a lot of dynamism to this notice, and that is what our core, because everyone is right now talking about consent collection, consent collection, consent collection. But as soon as the reality is hit that the consent is not being collected, our top line is impacted, we are not able to cross sell, we are not able to upsell. So that's where the flexibility would be required. So this is another type of notice. Likewise, Abhishek, can you show a third type of notice, box notice? This is a customizable. So if you see, this is another type of notice. So we are working on lot many different variation of the notices. Again, awaiting feedback from the regulator themselves. So yeah, this is another more simpler type of notice. So we have kept the essence same, where we have syntax, where we have some consent information. And once the, Abhishek, can you give consent on any first one, give on first one audio. I mean, on the practical aspect, there are a lot of elements. I mean, one of the ask of the DPDPA is that it needs to be a WCAG compliance. So on the ground, I mean, there are people who might not be able to read, write. So you need to have an audio consent for them. So when we looked into, I mean, when we did the POC, we understood that the people are struggling that, okay, there is a Hindi narration of the why data is being used or what are the consent related to it, but they were not able to understand kahan pe checkbox karna hai. Because I'm able to understand the thing that is being said, but I'm not able to figure it out on the notice. So what we did is we added the visual cues to it in order to provide that visual aid to the individual who is illiterate, who does not know. So I'll just showcase that part. Yeah. Abhishek, audio is not visible, not audible. Just reconnect. Yeah. Lot of learning, a lot of iteration, a lot of mistakes, but yeah, progressing every day. Progressing.
नमस्ते, ये ट्रस्ट बैंक की एक महत्वपूर्ण गोपनीयता सूचना है। हम आपको समझा
Yeah, Abhishek, we are able to listen.
नमस्ते, ये ट्रस्ट बैंक की एक महत्वपूर्ण गोपनीयता सूचना है। हम आपको समझाना चाहते हैं कि आपकी व्यक्तिगत जानकारी को किस प्रकार इकट्ठा किया जाएगा और उपयोग किया जाएगा। ये सब डिजिटल पर्सनल डेटा प्रोटेक्शन एक्ट 2023 के अनुसार किया जाता है। ये कानून आपको आपकी व्यक्तिगत जानकारी पर अधिकार देता है और आपको ये तय करने का अधिकार देता है कि आपकी जानकारी कैसे प्रोसेस की जाए। हम आपका पूरा नाम इसीलिए मांगते हैं ताकि कानूनी रूप से मान्य दस्तावेज, अकाउंट स्टेटमेंट, इनवॉइस और केवाईसी से संबंधित रिकॉर्ड तैयार किए जा सकें। इस उद्देश्य को स्क्रीन पर रेड बॉक्स द्वारा दिखाया गया है और आपका सहमति 365 दिनों के लिए सक्रिय रहेगी। हम आपका ईमेल एड्रेस इसीलिए मांगते हैं ताकि आपको महत्वपूर्ण अपडेट, सुरक्षा अलर्ट और आपके बैंक खाते से संबंधित ट्रांजैक्शनल नोटिफिकेशन भेजे जा सकें, जिसे ब्लू बॉक्स द्वारा दर्शाया गया है, और ऑनलाइन बैंकिंग तथा सर्विस रिक्वेस्ट से संबंधित ओटीपी, वेरिफिकेशन लिंक और कम्युनिकेशन साझा करने के लिए, जिसे ग्रीन बॉक्स द्वारा दर्शाया गया है। आप
So this is just, I mean, so a lot of work is being done from the feedback. And if you see, यहाँ पे एक बार अभिषेक consent दो, just give a consent and move forward. You'll see that OTP will be triggered. This is another interesting journey. Organizations, some of the organization will have a workflow where they are verifying the customer email and mobile number with the OTP. And at that point of time, there is no need to verify the individual by the consent manager. And if they do not have that OTP or email verification, then there's a likelihood of having, I would say, a fraudulent consent. Therefore, the consent manager has to do that validation. So here what you see was that brief verification happened, and post that successful consent given, the individual was redirected to, or they continue to their different journey, maybe dashboard, maybe shopping page, or whatever it is. Again, Abhishek, go back. So one of the ask of the DPDPA was that the consent, giving consent should be as simple as revoking consent should be as simple as giving the consent. So one of the way we interpreted is that as soon as you give the consent, we give you opportunity, or we give you some time windows so that you can manage the consent. So you go and manage the consent. This is where you directly jump into the user dashboard or data principal dashboard that is there with the organization. So tomorrow privacy.flipkart might have a page like this, or trust.kotak mahindra or trust.hdfc bank will have a page like this. So this is a Sahaj bank. So as you go into the system does a basic verification, and on basis of that verification, what it does is it will be consolidating all your internal consents and the past data deletion request, updation request, all those things you have done. So if you Abhishek recently engaged with two of the collections with the organization. One was he applied on the home loan page, another he applied on the register page. On that page, there are some consents that were given, some data points. What is the consent period? What are the consent given? So all those information is visible to him. One of the thing, customers are curious about asking organization, hey, what data you have associated with me? So as a consent manager, we are witnessing that. Of course, we do not have any visibility to PIA data, but we're able to identify what data is being submitted or collected by the organization. So it is being shown by default here. Why this is important is because If this information is not there, the customer will give unnecessary grievance request. Hey, Sahaj, I want to know what data you have collected from us. Hey, Sahaj, I want to know what data processor you are sharing my data assuming. So all those information is extracted from the artifact and provided in the consolidated way with the core goal that the data principal has that information required and he does not unnecessarily bother the data fiduciary. So this is Abhishek, update the consent. So here what you is required, you would be able to update the consent, you would be able to revoke the consent. So when you update, there are events that are created in the CMS system which are ready to be consumed by your deletion pipeline, your updation pipeline, your processing pipeline based on how your processing is done internally or externally, right? Again, Abhishek, go back, update preference. So there you will see that there is also agreement ID, because tomorrow when a data people wants to reach out to Data Protection Board of India, there is some empirical data that might need to submit to the Data Protection Board. So one of the asks during this mighty code for consent was that, okay, you need to also create the data agreement syntax and all those things. So here, when you download the data, you will see that lot of information is already, Abhishek, open the document. Yeah. So the structure is being worked out. So a lot of information like, okay, what was the purpose? What was the PAN card? What is the consent scope? So all this document is being worked out as per the legal uh, guidance from I mean, there are more information to be added here, like metadata, the language and everything else. So with that, there's a grievance center. So this comes white label. I mean, we have white label system that the organization has to deploy. Connection would be done with a step-by-step implementation. So there's a grievance center, there's a data request, data rights, all those things are there. So a lot of things. Go to Abhishek, data update request. Yeah. So here, when you say email, mobile number. So if the customer says that, hey, update my email number and change it to something else. So, and change it to Abhishek, add some random email and change. Yeah. So the system, the CMS consent management system emits the event that will be consumed by the internal system of data fiduciary. On basis of that, the action would be done. Of course, we have a capability to directly go and do the changes to the databases, but none of the organizations are comfortable exposing their production-based database to any other systems apart from one that is under their control. In spite of being in the production, even if we deploy it on the customer's infrastructure, they have shown that reluctance to this. So that's where CMS and their existing technical team needs to work together in order to ensure the deletion pipeline, updation pipeline. KYC verification, there's a manual verification. You could also bring in your own KYC party. A lot of large banks already have a KYC partner, so it's just plug and play kind of a thing. Yeah. So that's that. I mean, there's a lot more aspects of it. There's a timeline, there's a different modules, how you handle the data, principal request, grievances would be coming in the scale. Organizations, especially B2C, will be receiving thousands and thousands of requests per month. So even if they give 1 hour to every request, that's not technically feasible. So how you handle the grievance? So we have a lot of specific, I would say, approach towards problem, the specific problems step by step. So yeah. So happy to take up your questions, if any. I think there were few in the chat box. Is there a self-certification module for us to familiarize with the functionality? So Reena ji, like I said, I'll be working on that. It's awaiting. Our rules, our rules requirement included in the product. Yes, we have something called DIY. Abhishek, can you show DIY? So one thing what we realize is majority of the large organization has a privacy team and everyone else, but the larger India might not have a privacy team. They might not have a technical competency. So we have something called DIY module. So in this DIY module, what we have done is we have translated the DPDPA compliance into the various steps that the organization can take. And if they complete the things step by step, they ideally would be moving towards the DPDPA compliance. So we have identified almost like 61 steps that you could do. Some steps would be applicable to you, some steps would be not applicable to you based on your sector, your I would call significant data fiduciary status. I'm going to dive a little bit into a few of the steps. For example, the first is organization setup and branding. So if you are a data fiduciary, who wants a custom branding to your notices, want to have that fancy color in your cookie consent and all those things, you'd be able to do here. All those communications that are emitting out of the consent management system, those are ideally right now coming from the Concur SMS, Concur email number, because we have to do DLT approval. There are multiple languages of approval from the DLT. So if the organization, if SBI wants to send it via their own email, then they have to provide the SMTP, they have to provide their SMS. This is just a basic setting. We should go to by another module. Yeah. So just a bit. So there's a management of your organization and role. You would want to create your department. You would need to add some people. You would want to allocate some internal resources to them, read only, write only, download the consent, access your data principal requests. So all those modules are there internally. Likewise. Back.
So regarding the
Your perform data.
interoperability of the consent, can you
Right.
talk a little how that is being built?
I'll share my screen on that. We are pioneering that for India. So by month of, I think, March, April, we are just awaiting final discussions with the GEO. So 5 of the CMP shall be demonstrating that interoperability. Let me just show you. Yes. So here it is. So when we talk about the interoperability, we are looking at 2 different segments to that. One is there are companies like Kotak Mahindra, Tanla, etc. that have built their own consent management system internally. So right now, if I have to manage my consent with a Kotak Mahindra.
Sorry for the interrupting. That Kotak Mahindra, what you're telling, they have a consent management life cycle for themselves, or they are looking at consent manager as a
everything. They have decided to take a bold step, and they said that we are going to build the system internally. Now, this is where the interesting part would come in. Will government accept their consent manager? We don't know. Management system, we don't know yet. But anyway, their consent management system, assuming it is accepted by the government, that needs to be interoperable with the consent manager. I think this is more likelihood. So tomorrow, the Kotak Mahindra will be running after and telling consent manager, please integrate my system into this. So there needs to be a common approach. There needs to be common standard around it so that it is easy for anybody to do it. The beauty of India is that the government is very forward looking. Back in 2017, they had already given a vision document. They have something called National Blockchain Framework, wherein they have envisioned a lot of different services that ought to be built on this core system. So consent management framework or interoperability is one of the things. So what we did is, whenever any consent is collected by Concur, here Concur is residing on, let's say, the bank infrastructure. So as soon as that consent is collected, it's anyway cryptographically secured, it's Merkle hashed, and there are a lot of ways that ensure that the consent cannot be tampered even by the bank, part 1. But we are taking that for granted. We are assuming the system is compromised. And as soon as the consent is collected by the bank, a part of information goes to this national blockchain infrastructure, or what we are calling the unified ledger, or Vishwasiya blockchain, or different names. And that's where your purpose ID, your data element, the retention period, and some metadata of the consent goes to it. Because as soon as this attestation is done, it serves 2 purposes. One, now your consent becomes more acceptable from the point of view of legal, because there are a lot of precedents for the blockchain acceptance. A. B. When some of the metadata is already available on the blockchain, then other consent manager would be able to discover what are the consents available for the particular individual on the larger context of India. So And also tomorrow the data protection board, if they want any additional information, they would be able to look into this unified ledger and resolve the matter internally. For example, I go and I tell, sir, my name is Gaurav Mehta. My email is ugaurav@gmail.com. And Zomato has violated my data protection right. They have shared my data with n number of parties. This is the reason. Now, when I escalate this to Data Protection Board of India, they want to resolve it. And they cannot resolve it until unless they have an insight into this consent artifact. So when this unified ledger is there, on the machine level, not only data processor or fiduciary, even the Data Protection Board of India or the digital office would be able to validate the legal artifact and take a required decision in that direction. So interoperability is being worked upon, the consent artifact standard. There's also personal data breach artifact standard, and how the consent manager are supposed to talk with each other. How tomorrow, if companies like Kotak Mahindra, they have built their own internal consent management system, then how they can plug it with their larger infrastructure. So that is being worked out step by step. So yes, we have given a lot of thought. We have worked out a lot of things in this direction, and just awaiting that internal consensus has been done, awaiting that technical exchange of the data and the thoughts with them, and going to some pilot and post that, demonstrate to the regulators for their feedback and everyone else. So yeah.
Are you expecting the data protection board to give further guidance on how to
Sir, they are
take this up further? Because we don't know whether that unified ledger is one which we want to go with, right? I mean, is there a guidance somewhere?
no, you won't have to go. He would only tell you to go when the data protection board mandates you to go. Before that, there is no interoperability. We are saying
So
that the
at
consent
the
interoperability.
at the moment, your product doesn't have it, is it? Are you saying that?
We already have it, but bank, they might approve, they might not approve. So we have kept it open for now. If you
Oh,
want,
okay.
we are more than happy to make it interoperable from the day one. And that works in their advantage because they won't have a vendor lock-in. So yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, so
Gaurav, who would be responsible for maintaining that unified metadata at this point in time?
sir, this is exactly same like how we are looking at a DLT infrastructure. In the DLT SMS infrastructure, there are 4 nodes. Vodafone has 1 node, Jio has 1 node, Smart Ping, likewise 5-6 telcos have a node already running. And this also we expect to have, I mean, if you see here, we have recommended consent managers to have 1 node. With that, a larger data fiduciary, for example, Kotak Mahindra, if they are having their own internal consent management system, then they can run a node as well, because in that way, the interoperability would be very seamless. Third, if the government wants, they can also run the node. So there are 3 different thought process to it. One, your SMS infrastructure of India is already there. So RBI and the TRAI is working on that. So maybe it could be built upon that. But the problem is the consent volume is going to be very high. So the DLT infrastructure has certain limitation. Option 1. Option 2, Vishwasia blockchain is there, but they haven't gone into a large scale data handling. So CDAC Hyderabad and Mighty and IISc and other things are happening. So they might want to push it into that direction. That's the second step. The third is, we are not waiting for their mercy. We are not waiting for their progress. Internally, as a consent manager, we have been talking with each other and we have built this same infrastructure, because when you look at national blockchain, it is built on Hyperledger Besu. So that kind of technology is already available to them. So tomorrow we would be able to plug it into any of the systems. So yeah, that's that. I mean, I hope that gives you some insight. So 2 approaches: bottom down. If the government is agile enough, they are innovative enough, they should be ideally telling us in the next 6 to 8 months. If not, then bottom up. That, hey, regulators, we have already worked out. Is it okay with you? So that kind of thought process we have. I don't know where it would lead.
You mentioned about having multiple nodes here coming from different verticals. Is it expected that government will manage these nodes?
No, this won't be managed. It's more like a decentralized infrastructure. So the code is already available in the public domain, theoretically. and you would
You also mentioned about having multiple nodes across, say, private companies, regulators, and even the individual entities. For example, if a small company, a micro sector company wants to get into this kind of consent management, where will their consent get acknowledged? That is something
no, they won't
I'm
have.
missing.
This is the smaller company won't have resources. They won't have a technical incentive to build or to deploy such kind of a node. This node is primarily for the
No,
consent
no, I
managers.
understand. I understand they may not have the resource, that kind
Correct.
of resource to build a node, but how will they get integrated into that node?
They will have a API. It's a submit API. So if you are a Kotak Mahindra, you don't want to run a node, there are unified ledger APIs. Whenever you are collecting the consent, submit your consent artifact to this open APIs, and rest will be taken care of. Okay. Let me again show you what I meant. So
No, I understand from the corporate point of view. I mean, it's a big entity where, as an example that you're talking about Kotak, they have their own different, businesses like insurance business, banking business, everything. They might want to put everything together and integrate everything into a node that they themselves are building. What my question or intention was, a small businessman who is collecting data, who works as an agent to some kind of an RTO service, as an example, right? He collects some basic data like license. He's providing an service, RTO service of renewing a license or renewing your vehicle
correct.
registration. So in that
Correct.
case, he will consume so much of PII, right?
Correct.
And to process the this thing. In that case, he might still be using the consent management, and that consent management, I am trying to see how it will get integrated into the existing nodes.
My question
I mean,
he
is that a
using the
requirement in the
consent?
first place?
No, that is not a requirement. That is not a requirement, if I understand correctly. So the question for me that RTO agent will be very first question. Has he built his own consent management, or has he used the third party consent management? If
I
he
think
has
that
used
that would be like, he would be using existing consent management rather than building it, because he may not have the resources.
correct,
He's an individual,
that
right? To
that
providing
is the
services
reason
to
why
other individuals.
that is why we are building this unified consent ledger, because we don't want every India to have a third party consent manager and make it as a cost center. बहुत सारे बिजनेस है जिनका थोड़ा सा डेटा यूज होता है और उनको सिर्फ कंसेंट इंटरऑपरेबिलिटी के कारण वो रुके हुए हैं. They are already doing everything correct. So that's where this approach opens up the avenue for the smaller player to just with a few API make their consent management compliant with the interoperability and the larger ask of India. So that's the truest intention. But it's quite far from here. So yeah, that's that. But there's a lot of gray area on this aspect. We ourselves have been doing research, talking, discussing, planning, developing, iterating. So a lot of guidance would be required. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Ramesh?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Yeah, any views, comments?
No, good. Good clarity. I think Godanram sir is asking question.
We are saying we are late entrants to this DPDP era, when the whole world is already embraced with the data, privacy data and its protection. And that too, they have high intensity law in place. We are saying India is much liberal. Whether these issues or problems were not faced there and how they have resolved there and why we are facing this as a unique problem here, I am unable to understand. Their severe data, this one is highly severe. Privacy protection is very important there. At that time, they have not found that difficulty and they have embraced it. Here alone, why these multinationals are struggling or the banks are struggling.
Okay.
If the same bank were to operate in Europe and other places where they have international branches, they will have to adapt it. They would have done it already. Why this kind of a issue
This
is
is where the
cited
stark
only in Indian law.
this is where the stark difference between the old laws of the world and Indian law is coming. Indian law is far more progressive than the European or the other laws, in my limited understanding. For example, if I ask you, what are the 10 websites, European websites, where your personal data is right now there? You won't be able to answer. Are you even aware that how many American company cookies or GDPR companies cookie are lying on your browser, tracking you relentlessly day and night without your knowledge? You won't be able to know it. The third thing is that when you look at the India and the Europe law is by default trusting that you are good people. Indian law is by default trusting that you are not a good people because I have given you 10 years to operationalize the privacy and you haven't done it, neither the processor, neither the fiduciary. Therefore, in my law, I am giving you a specific mandate and the ask, you just do it, and by default, the privacy would be taken care of. This is where we see the seismic shift between the approach towards the compliance. There, it's a principle based. Here, it's ask based. I want cookie consent. A consent needs to be in this way. I want DPDPA notice. DPDP notice needs to be preceded prior to your data collection. It needs to be specific because the law, as I see it, is about not just privacy, it's about making that data principal pause and ensuring that he is informed. And second, that consent that he's giving is actually a legal artifact rather than the consent as a checkbox. So, India law is very specific, exhaustive, and more detailed, in my understanding.
I think our Navi will be in a better position to comment on his observations. I feel they are not totally right. In fact,
No, I say perhaps they have to still learn. See, just because a company is an MNC, we cannot say that they know everything. Okay, so let us not have that prior this thing that if somebody is already an MNC, they have 500 crores, 1,000 crores turnover, they are having the knowledge to follow what is required to be done. So they are also learning. Okay, so for GDPR, there was not much of a liability for the Indian companies. We are all talking about it, but there has been no specific case where some 100 crores fine has been placed on an Indian company. Okay, so therefore they were actually taking it more like a bookish knowledge. Now they are closer to the enforcement. They need to actually do something better. See, basically the problem is people are not able to unlearn what they have learned for GDPR unless they are able to set the old things aside and look at DPDPA afresh. They will have this difficulty. From what Gaurav has said, there are many things which I have taken note where the company is trying to dictate the software developer. You develop the software like what I want. What you already have, as I told, is of no consequence because so far you have been working on a non-DPDPA scenario. You don't even have a segregation of GDPR data and DPDPA data. And how will you be able to get into consent for DPDPA? You will be sending the same consent to a GDPR client sitting somewhere in London or say France, and you will be sending him a 22 language consent form from India without knowing that that person has got nothing to do with DPDPA. So there are a lot of basic things which companies needs to understand. So that's where I was saying that companies should first look at understanding the compliance requirements and then jump into software. See, go first and buy a software because I have got money is not the right idea. So I think that is where mistakes are happening. Anyway, I don't want to go further into it. I would rather like people like Samir Kulkarni and Prashant to give their views because during our training programs, I have been talking about these things in quite depth. So let us listen to Samir or Prashant about their views, how they would approach their clients of the working on this consent. Yeah.
Yes, Samir. Go first. Samir, I will wait.
Yeah, go ahead.
Prashant sir, go ahead, sir. Prashant sir, you're the boss.
So Now, thanks so much, Gaurav, for his enlightening session, because I anyway wanted to contact you because we are also facing some of the challenges that we discussed in the last 1 hour or so. Because we are consultants to some of the companies where we were approaching the clients to start their implementation for DPDPA and for example, Samir, he's a CIO for a big company, right, handling almost 16,000 people. Has he initiated that? He was also waiting for something to happen. Mandate kab hoga tab main karunga. So that has been the mindset. Now, having said that, after 13th November, has the world changed for them? I don't see. Because whenever the client we are talking to, they are saying, sir, now we have 18 months. When do we start? So that means there is still, as Gaurav pointed out, there is still a lackadaisical approach within the organizations. Now we are talking to 3 or 4 clients. One of them we already started. That client is in the insurance domain. So fortunately, because they are a regulator-driven organization, there are many things that were already in place because we also did the GDPR 3-4 years ago, and though it was not a complete success, but 80-90% has been done. So that is how we have started Navi and Gaurav there. But I would like Gaurav's help there on consent management, and I'll introduce when the right time comes. And the other client we are working with is a travel agency. So in that scenario, though they have been mandated not to send their details to the agency directly via email, or they are still doing that. So we are still discovering how do we curb that practice.
Sir, I went for the Singapore visa, and this is the problem. I have deliberated very deeply into this because my Singapore agent also shared my passport with someone who was there in the Singapore so that the hotel could be booked. I was
Right,
surprised to see with my folder in his laptop, there were at least 300 more individual people's folder and the data with the PI, highly critical PIA data. And
right.
that triggered me as a privacy professional. And we decided to think around, okay, what could be the product that would build so that they're able to handle that data in the safer way. And tomorrow, if the data is shared with that person in the Singapore, he should have some control over that data as well. So have been
Right.
deliberating a lot deeper into this, but if opportunity presents, would like to showcase the approach, the workflow, and on basis of that, have a feedback and move forward towards development.
Right. Yes, I would definitely in the next a month or so, I will approach you to demonstrate to the client that how we should, I mean, control that spreading of PI data everywhere. And because on the client side also, Samir, there is a lot of ignorance. Despite they telling their clients not to send information on WhatsApp, still the client is saying that boss, मेरा card number ले लो, passport ले लो, मेरा book कर दो. Now you can control that at maybe at the client end, Gaurav. But how will you control that at the end client end? And they are more of a corporate booking agency, right? So thousands of booking happening for one company, but one high profile guy, an MD in a company, says that boss, I will not do the booking on my own. Take this passport, do the booking. I have to fly to Singapore tomorrow morning. Now, how do we control the ego of the people who deliberately send their information to travel agents?
So this is
Please,
a
sir, you have
SOP
any answer
problem.
for this, Gaurav? Any highlight on this?
So this is a SOP problem. People's convenience outshines everything else. So this cannot be fight. If we are trying to fight this, then I think it's impossible.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Samir, your turn.
Okay. Kamal, you have got anything to say?
Sorry,
No,
I was on
sir.
mute. Yeah. So I was saying, as Prashant said, this is, to implement this, we need two things. One, we already have a laws, we need a platform. And second thing, we have to start that mindset. As rightly said by Prashant, that data is sent by on a WhatsApp or some other non-standard channels. Uh, See, I sit on the other side of the table where I received my customer data and I process them. So here, two sides of questions. Whether if I am starting my DPDPA journey or data protection part, will my client accept it at this stage or not? That is still open question for me. So considering that, should I start now or should I wait for a few more months? So this is one of the discussion which is pending between me, Prashant, and Navi sir. So we had some discussion earlier with Navi sir. So just I want to take up that in some next time. But again, here when you have a consent manager, will your client is ready to give the consent on this particular platform, or they have their own idea that they will give it on someone else platform? So how we are going to manage that part? Because considering my case where I have 1600 clients, so at least there are 5 to 6 consent manager platforms. So how I will manage all of them? Should I have to take uh, every subscription, or one subscription will manage all of this? What is the idea on this? Can anybody or Gaurav can give some idea on this?
Sir, my assumption is the consent manager is going to be free forever for the data principle. And when Sameerji reaches out to any of the government approved consent manager, Sameerji will be able to see their 360-degree data sprawl, where their data is, what are their consent, update and revoke it. So that's going to be part one. Part two of the question, whether this system will be accepted by the people or not, or how the consent would be collected, that totally depends upon the consent collection mechanism. We have already demonstrated the consent collection via even IVR. अभी IVR में होता है, you get a notice. This call will be recorded for training and monitoring purposes. Finish. No agreement, no freedom to choose whether you have to opt in or opt out. But consent would be not just on mobile app or web app, it would be offline consent. It would be your smart TV, your point of sales, your audio, your WhatsApp, your live chat. There could be n number of places where the consent might be triggered on basis of your personal data collection, and the consent management system should be flexible enough to accommodate the mechanism everywhere without diluting the experience of the individual. And that's where the struggle is. Otherwise, basic notice, it could be spin by anyone. Consent is also not a one-time activity. It is a bifurcated activity based on what is the business goal. I go to Flipkart. On the very first page, they can ask me for a home address consent. They can ask me for my credit card consent. They could ask me for everything else. But they would choose to collect consent for limited data at step one. And when I go to my credit card page, they would do a just-in-time notice, a very smaller version of the DPDP, a very simple version of the notice that would collect the second consent for that, probably. So what I'm saying is, it's not just a notice, it's about how your data collection is happening and what could be the most appropriate way to collect the consent. Now, the last part, will customer change the habit or you have to change the habit? That's a chicken and egg problem.
Agreed, agreed. Since I'm a vegetarian, so both doesn't matter to me. Agreed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just one, sir, closing statement. So I just want to take a parallel from the GDPR. When you look at the GDPR, everything is principle based. Only one technical ask from the GDPR was you have to have a cookie consent. And that has created around $10 billion industry, $5 billion one trust and blah, blah, blah. Now, when you look at the GDPR in summation, like in simplified form, one is a cookie consent. Second is your ROPA that you internally have. Third is your transfer tool that you use in order to transfer your data with the third parties. Apart from that, there is not much material activity or the technical activity that the organization has to do. I'm saying in a very simple term. Now, when you look at it on the Indian context, there's a cookie consent, there is a DPDP, a notice at the collection point, there is a mobilization of your consent, integration with the system, your data principal rights, and everything else. So it's a heavily engineering driven activity or the implementation driven activity where privacy is handled by the implementation of the rule, not at the mercy of the DP or the organization.
Okay, friends, I think if there are no other questions, I think we need to close this session. Mr. Somshekar, can we close the session now?
Sorry, sir, your voice is very low to me.
So So before we close, Gaurav, thanks for the session. Navi sir, thanks a lot ton for arranging this for us.
Thank you everyone, sir. It's a
I
privilege to
think,
present again.
Somsekhar, you can try to give final comments and close the session.
Sure, sir. So thank you very much, Gauravji and your team. So yeah, we look forward to have a few more sessions once the tool got matured and
You're able to
further
hear me?
updates.